Senator Max Wise, I've had the chance to cover you a fair little bit, in my time covering the legislature, but give me a short biography, so to speak. I know a little bit of your background. Like you said, you did a little bit of work in the FBI, but tell me a bit about, what should folks know about who Senator Max Wise is and how you came to be a member of the legislature.
Well, I will say that I'm the same person when I walked into the legislature that I am today. I've not allowed, this role in terms of being a rank and file member to change me. I don't expect to change who I am, even stepping into a leadership position now. But in terms of my past, I've never had ran for political office until I stepped into running for the Kentucky General Assembly. I'd always been in leadership positions before in my community or in my life. Was encouraged to one day maybe pursue something in terms of public service, and opportunities have kind of presented themselves, and I've never steered away from not jumping into something. If it's a race for Kentucky State Senate or running for the floor leader here in the Kentucky State Senate. Raised by a women's basketball coach, and my dad was a human resource manager. My mom coached 32 years of women's college basketball at Campbellsville University. My dad dealt with people being an HR manager at Fruit of the Loom. And I think those two skill sets of having parents in those occupations has really prepared me for life in public service. And you may think, well, how in the world does that happen? With a basketball coach, I'm competitive, but it's also knowing how to command presence on a floor. And I think being the floor leader, it's going to be like a point guard position on a basketball team. You know when to dish, and you know also when to take a shot, and then also you know when to hold the ball. And I will say, I do a lot of sports analogies with being a son of, once again, a coach. But my dad also had a great gift to be able to work with people and talk to people. An HR manager at Fruit of the Loom in Campbellsville, which was one of the largest employers in our community. He hired a lot of people, and unfortunately had to fire a lot of people. A lot of times that's breaking good news and bad news to people. I see the same thing in what I'm going to be doing as floor leader. Not everybody's going to get what they want. There's going to be a lot of people pushing for their piece of legislation. Some people you're going to have to say no to. I think it's managing personalities. I think it's managing people. And so I'm really looking forward to both the challenges and the opportunities that this presents. I'll also say I'm a father of 4. With that, it's also in the house, managing people in my home of what their expectations are. Go into Christmas holiday season here soon. I've got 2 daughters and 2 sons, and they've got a Christmas wish list that's probably out this door of what they want and what they think they need. But not everybody gets what they want a lot of times. And so, I think this is a position that my skill set hopefully will serve me well and to be able to do.
How long have you been in office so far?
This will be my 10th year coming in January, so I'm in the middle of my 3rd term. And I never ran before for any type of political office. Jumped right into the fray of becoming a Kentucky State Senator, and I've really never looked back over my soon to be 10 years in.
So 10 years in, what kind of gave you the impetus to say I'm going to throw my hat in the ring to be floor leader?
I will say I've always been one not to be feared of taking on a challenge. I think a lot of times in our personal lives, it doesn't matter for elected officials or ordinary citizens, sometimes people are afraid of losing. They're afraid of, I don't want to take that position, or I'm scared to do this because what if I lost? I don't care about losing. I didn't get my wife on the first time I said, would you go out on a date with me? It took persistence. And with persistence, you got to keep going at something. And eventually you may win or you may lose, but it's okay. I ran as the lieutenant governor nominee with Kelly Craft. We lost. You learn a lot of times from the losses, and sometimes you learn from the wins. And I will say that in my life, it's not being afraid to step out there and to take a chance. I didn't want to have a regret, and I waited for an open seat in the Kentucky leadership position in the Senate. I've been encouraged by my colleagues, to ran for other things in terms of running against city members, and I was like, nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait and see what position may open up. And I really thought my skill set of being able to work with people, relationships I've developed over the years, this is a great opportunity. That's why I set out to do it.
What do you think has been the defining pieces of policy that you've been able to carry in your time in the General Assembly, and what are going to be, the priority policy areas you focus on moving forward?
Well, I really give so much thanks to my leadership team over the years to allow me to develop a really open portfolio of legislation. I've not been pigeonholed, that I've just done areas that are just education issues, or they're just issues dealing with social conservative issues, which I very much support. My first bill that I ever did was creating the Kentucky Childhood Cancer Pediatric Trust Fund. My third child is a stage 4 cancer survivor. I knew when I entered office, I may not be here for a long time, but after seeing children go through what my son did and go through chemotherapy and go through everything, I want to help people. So that was my number one bill. I said, if I left after that session, I did something that personally affected me and hundreds of families that I was able to see and I wanted to do. But I've also taken it from there and I've gotten into education policy. I've really done some awesome stuff around school safety after the Marshall County shooting. And a lot of that was actually sitting down with those families of those school shooting victims and to talk to them and once again try to help people. And I want to make sure in terms of leaving, when I leave here one day, that we as a state did some of the best policy around school safety that we could have ever imagined. And we've been very blessed for the opportunity that 23 or 24 other states have modeled what we've done here in Kentucky. I've also stood ground on my conservative family values. Senate Bill 150. Many people may call that a controversial issue. Some may call it common sense. But when looking at that, I was not afraid to step up to the plate when we're looking for a bill sponsor to say, I'll take it on. And I'm happy to step in that arena. And I think my colleagues have looked at that over the years and to seen where I've grown as a legislator. And then also to diversify after that and look at pharmacy PBM issues. Now you talk about some policy wonky stuff. I mean, that's not going into the weeds, that's going into a jungle, with just a machete. Because you're going up against big time corporations, you're going up against big insurance companies, but it's fighting for people. It's fighting for small businesses. It's fighting for independence. It's fighting for retail. So I've been very blessed to be able to be where I'm at today with a really interesting resume of political policy work.
Since you mentioned bills like SB 150, whenever you have pieces of policy come up moving forward that draw the kind of response that kind of bill did, regardless of what you may say, whether it be considered controversial or common sense, how do you balance those competing voices that are all going to be kind of clashing together whenever you have that inevitable response that you see in a committee meeting or in the chambers?
Well, one of the things I've learned in that is you've got to be tough-skinned to take a bill like that on. It's because you're going to get, ramifications and attacks from all different angles when you focus on an issue that can be considered controversial. But I've also have learned as a legislator, if you're going to stand, you're going to take a bill like that on, you better be ready for what comes with it. Not just anybody can handle a bill such as that. But I think that's where it really allowed me as a legislator to kind of grow. It allowed me to also control my emotions. I will say in this role as floor leader, you've got to have a good temperament because it's stressful. I know I've talked to Senator Thayer about it. I've not reached out to Senator Dan Kelly from Washington County, who was in that role many, many years ago when they were in the minority. But also knowing that it is going to be a position that many times you're the face of pieces of legislation because you're bringing it to the floor. You may not be carrying it, but as the legislative floor leader, you're going to be the one that's right there for like this, for interviews and for communication.
Speaking of which, just speak a bit about the endurance that the role requires. I've heard it described almost as though you're the traffic cop of the floor, so to speak, and from the time the first gavel falls to the time, you adjourn from the day. You're kind of leading it all, and that's a lot of parliamentary procedure to learn and a lot of preparation. Just how are you feeling about that, being front and center in the spotlight?
One of the things I've done is I've gone back and I've rewatched some of the sessions to be able to see exactly how the control on the floor may be. And I know every day could be different. It's not like every day the same routine. Now, it could be in terms of a script of what you're going off on in terms of communicating with the president on here's the orders for the day and things like that. But it gets into all of a sudden you could be throwing a curveball. It could be something of where a member of the minority steps up and voices something of objects to this, and all of a sudden it's got to be right there on the spot. Senator Thayer did a really good job of being able to kind of, be a bulldog when needed to, but also at the same time, calmness, on the floor as well. And so For me, the parliamentary procedures, will I make mistakes? Certainly. There's going to be probably certain things as you learn and grow into a position, we are going to make mistakes at some point. I'm just hoping it's not a catastrophic mistake of something that's made. But I'm also leaning on people like Damon that have been in this position before and ask questions. President Stivers, the institutional knowledge that he has, he's been nothing but gracious of working with me and extending that hand of, hey, you're going to do well in this position. It's a growing issue in terms of a growing position, I should say, as every session is going to be different of things that we take on. But I'm really looking forward to the challenges and opportunities. And you mentioned traffic cop. I think that's a really good analogy to use. I mentioned point guard or quarterback. Yeah, you're doing a lot of that. But also, you're raising that hand to say, sorry, your bill's not going to be heard. And that's managing expectations. That's managing members' personalities, too, that come with that.
You reflected on some of the things that it seems you've learned from your predecessor, Senator Thayer. I want to ask if there's anything or anywhere you feel like you can define yourself or set yourself apart from your predecessor.
I think we're all different people. We all have different personalities and issues such as that. I mean, what Damon did in his role, I'm going to make myself my role. I mean, it's just like, once again, an assistant coach takes over for a long-time head coach. The program's always going to be there, but it's what are you going to make of it? And I'm going to do the same thing. This institution is going to be here long after I leave. It was here long before I got here. But at the same time, in this role as floor leader, it's an opportunity there for me to really be able to embrace it. I don't yet know what that may be. I think it's way too early right now, but it's going to be something of where I'm going to step into a position. I'm going to be decision-making at a table of other leaders that I never was in before. I've always wanted to be in that room. We're finishing up Thanksgiving holiday right now. I'm sure you remember as a kid, you never were at the adult table until maybe a certain age. And all of a sudden you went from that little card table or that little fold-out table as a child, and then you made your way up to the adult table. I kind of feel like that's what I'm getting ready to move into. Our rank and file members never been in that room where it happened, Hamilton. But now it's moving into that room, being at that table. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what those type of discussions are. It's going to be a lot different, because before, as rank and file members, as soon as we gaveled off the floor, we were gone. Now, in terms of leadership, we gavel off the floor, it's going right into a closed-door meeting and talking about the next orders of the day. It's talking about big policy. It's working with the executive branch and doing things. But I think my past 9 years have prepared me for what I'm getting ready to step into.
So I don't want to let you go without at least asking if there's any early leaders in the clubhouse for possible big bills we may see this year or any issues y'all hope to tackle.
Right now in terms of priority bills, we've not yet discussed that. Next week we're in Bowling Green, December 11th through 13th at our caucus retreat. That's a really good time for us, and I've seen it over my years in the caucus here, for us to have a really casual, open conversation about what every member would like to propose. And it's leadership listening and then trying to work together of what are the priority bills. I know the House will be doing the same thing. I've not sat in yet on a joint leadership meeting between both the House and Senate leaders, but I'm sure that's going to be taking place soon as we get ready to go forth. I think right now in terms of priorities for me, what I want to see us do is continue to work on good economic conservative policy like we've been doing with tax reform. We have to continue leading the way in that. I think a lot of stuff you're seeing right now in terms of ribbon cuttings and job announcements, it all goes back to the work of the General Assembly. It goes back to right to work, and it all leads up to what we're doing right now of eliminating that state income tax. I think you're going to see us get right to work in where the House may be bringing us with some economic policy, making sure we have those triggers in place, that we're doing it in a very smart, physically conservative way. I have a lot of faith in Chairman McDaniel and Chairman Petrie in the House side. We're on a great trajectory right now as a state. And so I'm blessed while I'm in this position for as long as I'm in it to continue working on that policy and also common sense policy, in terms of what I think a lot of voters, especially after the win of President Trump, I think a lot of voters right now just want to make sure that we're doing common sense type work and, not doing something that's, not who we are as Kentuckians.